Anyways, so let me kind of give you a quick overview of why we're all here. Maybe some more people come in. So I titled this whatever, Text Analytics and AI in Action for Marketing on Social Networks. So the idea is, how can we actually use some of the material we're learning, or you guys are learning, not me at this point, been there, done that, for actual business purposes? And how can you then kind of think about applying that? So I asked some questions like this. So, do you ever wonder why certain ads show up on your social media feeds? Do you think that some of them are just wasted spending by the advertiser? Any of you think that? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, you wonder, right? So in this workshop, we're going to see how related to the company I represent, a big open data firm, which was awarded a grant to gather how we gather unstructured data, map it against social media, and target the right audience for that firms want to advertise their products to in social media. So we're going to take a predetermined problem statement versus an undetermined. So sometimes you guys will be thinking, if you're ever thinking in a hackathon or something, let's come up with a product idea. So that's undetermined. This case, it's predetermined. We're going to describe what that is. Problem state, we're going to talk about what steps are needed to get to the desired solution. And then we're going to be shown the solution. So it's not just about me just doing a straight presentation here. There's going to be a little bit of, class time. I want you guys to kind of rack your brain through it. As a group, then I'm going to show you actually what we did. I'm going to show you one of the use cases. And then as a group, I have down here, we're going to come up with an example ourselves, maybe not as extreme, because it does take some processing time and processing power. And then we're going to show you the results of what we have found in our, I think, 5 or 6 different tests with what this actually works. And then by that time, maybe the few words or phrases we've come up with will work for us, and we'll kind of, you'll go, ooh, ah, ooh. So it's funny, I say it here, it's geared to students and others who have a desire to utilize analytics in business applications. So if you think I'm going to be sitting here talking about what kind of algorithm was fair game for the test tonight, I can't remember. You guys were saying one of them.
Depth first.
Okay, there. So we're certainly not going to be going about and doing that. We may talk about some algorithms. I'm going to talk about an algorithm, but I'm not going to be testing you. We're not going to necessarily be coding in Python. I am going to run a Python program or two or something like that, but I don't want you guys to freak out about that. So what is the knowledge required? The internet. How many people here don't know what the internet is or don't never use the internet? Or, come on, social platform. That's the whole kind of concept. So it's imperative for this kind of understanding what we're going to be doing. Python, it's, we actually built this tool in Python. We actually looked at some other test sets to kind of go through instead. Technology stack is a question where it's going to come up. Social media knowledge. Have you ever seen an ad come up while you're perusing your Instagram or Facebook? Anyone? Who hasn't seen an ad? But you're qualified then. You're all qualified. You have as much social media knowledge as you need. We have somebody here who just came because of social media, but the idea is to kind of play through with this. Intellectual curiosity is an imperative. No matter what age or stage you're at in your life, I am, as I was telling the people before, it's been quite a while since my MBA. It's been less time since I worked on some other studies, but it doesn't matter, right? You're still growing. The fact that you're here means that you want to learn something new in the first place. And even if you're here because you have to be here because of your class is coming up. But it's kind of cool to actually see some of the things of your class, I think, in action. Hopefully you'll say that at the end. Right now you're going, okay, show us. Technical background. Okay, so this is the one that's like, what do I need to know and what do I need to do? Well, I say if you know the difference between a Phillips and a flathead screwdriver, that's enough. Why? I learned a long time ago. Anybody heard of a Commodore computer company? Okay. I learned on everybody's heard of a C64 and maybe an Amiga. I learned on a VIC-20. This came out like in 1980. So the point is yes, you do need to know a little bit about computers and maybe about whatever, but I'm not going to be sitting here talking about Hadoop and what it does for you or in-memory processing or all that wonderful fun stuff. That is needed. We need those structures and framework the bigger our data comes in order to run things, but you don't necessarily need to do that. I mean, I'm going to be literally running this on our computer here. We've had it set up so it runs on our server, which is stronger, but we're going to be running it here on this computer. So that's kind of the overall where we're looking into. So is everybody ready to dive in? All right, so now is this actually online live or we're just recording it?
We're just recording it.
So how do we know that it's online in the first place or it's not? So we're just trusting our AI professor. She could be looking through another thing though, right? I mean,
She's not here.
but she could be. We don't know. I don't know. Anyways. So here we are. Are we almost close to the AI? So how many are from the AI class? In the AI class, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's what, 6 or 7 students? How many are from the class before? What was it called again? The Dr.
Math 616.
Math 616. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 5. So how many are not in either of those classes? Let's see that. That's actually a good count. Oh, I'm glad. So how did you guys all find out about this? I mean, the classes. You kind of like, hey, you got to show up and do whatever. But the others, you saw some brochures around campus or what?
Our professor, we're in the same computer ethics class, and our professor let us know about it.
Okay, and what professor is that?
Dr. Ramona Santa Maria.
Okay, awesome. So we've got some cross-pollination. You guys are actually talking through it. Did anyone like just randomly see it like on the internet because we put it on LinkedIn and thought, oh, this is a cool subject? Or all of you mostly some sort of association with Buffalo State? Okay, that's fine. It's always helpful to know these things. See, why? Because I'm doing marketing analytics and you don't even realize it, do you? I'm serious. Old school. All right, so I'm going to cover the boring stuff first, but just so you know a little bit about. Oh, here we go. Nice picture, huh? Just so you know a little bit about us, myself and the firm. Sorry, there we go. Okay, so Related To is a firm that is actually founded by an American, Bob Lytle. That's not me, I'm Drew Fones. But he founded it in St. Catharines. And we'll talk briefly about Bob in just a second. And I'm Drew Fones, and I'm an American, but I live up in Burlington, Ontario right now. But I am associated because I do several things with Buffalo State. I do a few with UB and several things with Brock and occasionally with some of the other universities. I am also an adjunct faculty member of Grand Canyon University based in Arizona. All right, so here you kind of, you probably go, okay, Drew, so this is awesome. No, you're not saying that. I'm just, throwing those words out there. But, what we're looking at, is just a brief thing about myself. So I actually was living in Singapore when I was recruited to run to run advanced analytics for TransUnion, which is a credit bureau. Everybody know what a credit bureau is? They're the ones that call up if you're applying for a credit card and the score comes down and they decide to weigh or not weigh you, let you have in. So I actually have lived in 4 countries now. Lived and worked Singapore, England, the US, and now Canada for the last 5 years. A startup experience, some of you probably are saying big deal, and some of you are saying, oh, this is interesting. A lot of innovation now tends to happen more at startups or at incubators, even of large companies that have these little startup or incubators or something. They're going to come in and they're going to say, hey, look, you got this great data science training. This is what we want you to do, learn from here and how we're going to do it. So I have that. I have 2 + 2, meaning I've been in 2. Bob's is 1. I was also in another successful one, which was sold to, I was employee number 3 in a company called Cognalytics, standing for Cognitive Analytics, and that was successfully sold to CenturyLink a bit ago. By the way, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I think there's only a couple Drew Foneses in the book, and I'm the one that's from Canada and Arizona. You'll see us there as well. I have all but dissertation, PhD, and I have the other stuff. So Bob is also an American. He's 20 years of experience. He was the former CIO, so that's where I met him at TransUnion Canada. He started this firm almost 4 years ago, and I joined a little over 2 years ago. All right? Okay, so that's kind of the boring part. What do we do? So I could go talk forever on this, and I'm not. I'm going to give you the big, quick one. Related to is a small business data bureau, small and medium-sized data bureau, which gathers information, alternative data, from open and public data. What is that? Well, that'd be the internet, or that'd be anything that you would consider open and public. It would be the fact that counting planes landing at Buffalo Airport, technically if somebody records that, that's a piece of alternative data. It's not a typical thing that people might know. Because you'd say, oh, most people would say commercial airlines. Well, if I'm counting planes, I'm going to get all the military, I'm going to get all this, all the other people, the royalty, or the Hollywood people that might fly in to go see the falls and so forth. So these are some of the areas that we actually grab our stuff from. We actually do merge it with sometimes these other people down here, and we can join this together for data, which we then put together in sometimes in this giant product of ours called a due diligence, not D-U-E, but D-O. We're going to do D-O, diligence. We use graph database technology, so you can just, kind of click and pull and everything. So the whole concept here is open and public database, open and public data. Now, were you open and public data? Who was the open and public data? I thought we had somebody from, okay, maybe not. All right, so that's the boring part. Now this is the exciting part, because I actually add this. So it's a data bureau. Now we add the analytics. So this is what true analytics would be. So what does analytics maybe look like for people? It's using whatever data you have. So I prepared this slide way back when, and this is kind of what we sell. I'm not going to go through each of them, but those of you that are in the data science program going, I don't know what I'm going to do when I get this degree, it's probably going to be one of these things up here. Look interesting? Some of them? All of them? Do you know what all of them are? I don't have to talk about social media targeting. That's going to talk about right now. So text mining, sentiment analysis. Everybody know what that is? Somebody has tweets out there, so I want to gather the tweets and see are they more positive or negative to a company. Now, how would that help me? Well, I might want to know about changes that happen in society. Like Facebook, everybody 2 years ago probably had an opinion this high of Facebook. Since a few things, Cambridge Analytica came out, people's opinion of Facebook is here. My opinion hasn't changed much because I kind of knew what they were doing and allowing in the first place. All you have to do is read the print. But you see how the opinion changed, and that could affect the fortunes and directions of a firm. So those are, you can play that through. But those are some of the analytics things. This is not just, this is related to, but this is literally what I think you guys would look at from any data scientist coming out of here, or anybody, if you don't call them data, if you don't like that word data scientist, any graduate coming out of some of these graduate programs, the 2 classes we talked about. Not all of you are in those classes, that's fine. But this is for those that are.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So one thing up there I saw fraud modeling.
Yeah.
What's that?
So fraud modeling would be taking the data that you have and actually kind of connecting it through. A better look might be if I had a laser pointer. See those green balls there? So maybe you see the bottom green ball here somehow is connected to that upper blue ball. And so what you can actually do with the graph database technology is thank you. Who's got the laser pointer? Awesome. So well, the point is it might be 2 perturbations away or something like that. And normally you wouldn't, oh, that's fine, thanks. And normally you wouldn't, measure that, or you wouldn't know that, but you could find that. So we found this, I have another slide that I'm not going to put up here. We found, for example, a company that was bringing goods into the U.S., an import-export company, and they were busted because they didn't declare full value of their goods. We found several other firms that the directors and owners of that company owned, and then we kind of track back. And so it's kind of like, do you want to be doing business with something like that? So it's kind of tracking back fraud. That's how you would do that. But fraud analysis in general can be anything at all. I actually had a discussion with this recently at Interact, which is the debit card framework of Canada. So Interact has a fraud division. So if a transaction comes in, debit card, like how do they quickly know whether or not it's fraud or not, and how do they model that? What is out of the norm? Is it out of the norm for me to have a debit card that's a card present and be in Toronto and then 10 minutes later be in, I don't know, Winnipeg, right? That's out of norm, right? So that would be kind of a fraud. So fraud networks would go back and use big data and other analytical methods to figure that out. And now more and more using artificial intelligence as well. So, yeah. All right, the Valbot. Sorry, this is where I got to have my notes because I think it's kind of cool. But I actually have times, and so I can look up here. Where am I going on my time? All right, are we almost full AI here yet or no? We're still missing one? We're still missing one? Okay, sorry about you guys in AI. Apparently your instructor said start at 6 instead of 5:30. Everything else said 5:30. And because of what we have to cover today, in order for you to be done at 7 so you can take your test, which I know you're all dying to take. For those in the AA class, those that aren't, you're happy campers. The idea thing here is what exactly is Valbot? And why do we even call something Valbot in the first place? So Valbot is a product that we built via coding and internet linkage to open data, public and open data, to define a better audience in social media for advertising, for advertisers itself. Why do we call it the Valbot? Okay, so everybody's heard of like the bot, right? So the bot part maybe you get, right? So there's got to be some story in the Val part, and you're right. So in Canada, there's co-op programs very similar to internship programs you guys have here. And the co-op student comes and they stay for 4-month increments, and then they basically have 3 4-month increments, and then they add a year to whatever their program is. Whether it's an undergrad or a graduate program. So there was a lady named Val, which was trying to figure out the best way to target for one of the studies we were doing. So target people on social media and gather together this audience. And it wasn't like to buy anything, it was just to kind of figure out who was where and how they all interacted. And the thought was, okay, so we're using social media because that was, when you're doing alternative data, you kind of are thinking on the edge, where else are you going to go? What's the next step? No one uses Nielsen anymore, and I'm just joking, you guys that like Nielsen, but seriously, trying to figure out how to get all of these studies together, or figure out population control, things like that, in this case of businesses, we had to reach through a different method. So Val was this lady, and so the idea was specifically, I want all the suppliers for aeronautical manufacturing, because you need a lot of sheet metal places, screws. I mean, who makes all these little small things? Because a big place like Boeing is not going to just move to nowhere and then everybody's going to come. They're going to move to an area that might have that. So we sat down and we tried to say, we think we can beat it. And so we kind of built this very rudimentary bot that came up with better targeting on social media. So that's the whole idea behind Valbot. That's a story about why it's called Valbot. Kind of goofy, but I don't know. Anyways, you got to call it something, right? Let me take a step back as well. So that was then. Right about then, I joined the firm related to, and there was a grant opportunity with Professor Antone Ianzo at Brock University to go ahead and take this idea, the seed, to formulate it, which is what we're going to talk about right here. We're going to formulate a little bit, and to then run with it and actually design and use whatever you want to call it. We could call it machine learning or AI or whatever. We're going to talk a little bit about both and what we ended up doing. And so the government then paid students and post-grad students to then help build it. Kind of a cool thing up that. So thanks to NSERC, which is the National Science and Engineering and Research Cooperative, I think, and then OCE, which is the Ontario Center of Excellence, for funding a lot of this. In the long run, the firms get to keep the things that are built, and then the academics get to write about it and research, so forth. Those of you that are in academics. So the question is, what really is the problem? So, whenever you want to define something, Well, let's take it. Let's look at it a different way. You guys have all heard of setting strategy, right? Maybe some of you have MBAs, I know, and some of you are just trying to figure it out. Or you've had a boss say, okay, the strategy, we want to interact and so forth. So a strategy is more of like a way of doing things, but it's not always a way, the actual micro level way of getting to it. So you want to have a plan, a way to do that. So that's called road mapping a strategy, okay? So this is really, so in order to do that, you kind of have to say, well, what is it you're trying to do in the first place? In our first place, we saw this problem. Low click-through rates across industries. The average was less than 1% on, say, Facebook. Okay. Does anyone know what a click-through rate is? Oh, come on. Okay, so what's a click-through rate?
I guess when you're, basically when you engage with an ad, when you click on it and you go to the website, whatever, and you go and buy a
Right.
product.
Okay, great. And so you don't always necessarily have to buy it, right? Because I don't know about you, but I click on a lot of ads sometimes just to see things, and I go, oh, whatever. But it's fun, so they get me to click. So and maybe I buy, but maybe I don't. But so the idea would be to have a higher click-through rate, right? So how does advertising work right now? Look, most people are familiar with Google AdWords, right? So you come up with these AdWords, and then you pay for whatever, and then you're ranked, and then you pay Google based on the ranking and how it all comes through, and you come up with those words on your sheet and so forth. So we're thinking something similar, but we're trying to break into social media. I mean, Google, that's all last decade. We're talking new now. We want to figure out how can we better manage and write something, forward. And so that's something that we would look at. So let's look here. The problem is low click-through rates, and then because of those low click-through rates, the cost per click, which means how much it's actually physically costing for somebody to click, is costing too much. So we said, okay, that's great. Our theory is we can optimize, okay, somehow we can optimize this by targeting via ML and AI, whatever you want to call it, and we do a little bit of both, and produce higher CTR and lower cost per click, which was our measure of efficiency. So this was kind of, the storyboard is how can we do better over here? And the solution is what? So it's kind of like, here we're sitting on the planet, here's the moon, how are we going to get to the moon now? So this is the next steps, right? So the moon looks nice, it looks good, of course everybody wants to use the latest technology to get to the moon. Okay, you can tell some of you weren't alive in the nice space stuff of the 1960s and 70s. But anyways, there was a lot of research dollars put towards that race to kind of focus on that. All right, so this is the part where we start to get interactive, more so. So, first off, does everybody understand why is this a problem? Why would it be a problem in the first place? Who's it a problem for? Yeah.
It's a problem for the companies, because if everybody wants to display ads to everybody,
Yep.
then nobody's ads gonna be shown, because
Okay.
all these companies wants to sell you these products, but the time, all these ads can't be possibly given to one person.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you need to pick and choose who you're sending.
Yeah, you have an audience. You have, and this is all about marketing. If you think about it, what is it that pulls you forward? And so the thought is, I want to, especially me. Okay, as a consumer. So think from a consumer. As a consumer, I want to only see ads that will relate to me. So I don't want to see about makeup. I don't care about makeup, right? Okay. And maybe you say the same thing about some other things, but it's I don't want to see those ads. I don't care. You're wasting your time. It's kind of boring me, and I don't even want that on the page. And everybody has their own preferences, right? So, but what they may want to see or when they may not want to see. So most people say, well, I don't want to see any ads, right? Okay, do you want to pay for Facebook? Do you want to pay for LinkedIn? Do you want to pay for Instagram? These are the questions, right? Somehow, these platforms have to finance. So it's not only, it's in the consumer's interest to, at least a little bit in our interest, to maybe see ads we care about, maybe funny ads or whatever, that's okay. It's in the actual social networking corporations' interest to find ads that do allow for reaching the right target audience, and that's why Facebook does have things. So they can actually, you can select females, and you can select males, and you can select age groups, and you can select certain cities. Like, why would I have to advertise if I'm an auto dealership in Buffalo for a Denver area? Doesn't make any sense, right? So those are all things. Now, the firm themselves, the business that's actually paying for the advertising, does it make sense to them? Right, but they want to get as much bang for their advertising buck as they can get. So that kind of goes back to our question, which was, do you ever wonder why certain ads show up on your social media? Well, how many have gotten things that they're going, oh, I know that. And I'm not talking about like if you were looking at vacations to Cancun in Google, and then later something. So that's all the cookie stuff. And I think, like I said, that's like last decade kind of stuff they still use, right? Looking at your cookies, following your patterns, and all the other aspects. I'm talking about, can somebody self-select you to actually look or potentially look at their ad? And the answer is it's in the best interest, I think, of everyone. So it's in the best interest of you and I, because I don't want to pay for Facebook and LinkedIn. I don't know about you or Instagram or whatever else. I don't want to pay for Google either. So I guess I put up with the fact that there's the 2 ads at the top there that they select, and I want to just get to the search stuff. So the producers or sellers are semi-happy. You as an individual, maybe you're happier that you're not seeing, ads about makeup in my case or whatever, and maybe I still might see them. But the actual firms that are selling it are happy, right? So this is all, the idea here is to kind of, figure out how can we actually do this. So this is what we're going to attack here now is kind of mapping this. Now, before we go on to the next slide, I want to give you an example. Okay, how can I do this? So I already told you Facebook allows me to select male, female, etc. Now, you have to be very careful because there's something called redlining, and there's some government potential regulations interfering with that at this point in time because of the rules. They don't want you to be lending more to males than females or something like that, right? But those, and so you'll see some restrictions that they do or don't allow you to use. But we have found that even for the basic things, like an educational seminar, that using gender as a selector actually helps. But I can sit down and I can think of things like, okay, I want to, let's just say I'm a business that sells insurance, and I'm a commercial insurance line seller, and I want to sell them to, I'm a broker, and I want to go straight for landscapers. Because I already have a good number of landscapers in my portfolio, and if I can show them, I can actually put together a better portfolio for them in general, and I can be good for landscapers. So that's my goal. I now want to use Facebook. So I can think about things. So I'm Val in this case, right? I'm not Val Bot, I'm Val. So Val would they go, what do I know about landscapers? They all pretty much have pickup trucks, correct? Usually. And if they do, then you start thinking, okay, so pickup trucks, that's something I know. If I'm really going to sit there and start thinking about it, maybe I'm going to say, well, most pickup trucks are F-150s. And then I'm going to go a little bit further and go, I wonder if there's an F-150 pickup club of Buffalo that I can self-select so that it kind of goes to those, kind of steers towards that audience, right? But maybe I'm not thinking of that. Maybe that's the whole idea is there a method that can actually pick this up for us? And that's really where we're gonna drive that. What are the other things we might think about landscapers? They drink Gatorade, Powerade, maybe more so than the average person because they're losing their electrolytes or it's hard work. I think a little bit harder, and I could think, what do they do in the wintertime? Maybe they're doing snow removal or something. Does that help me? I don't know. You start thinking about these things, and the expert, in this case Val, starts writing them down and tries to then self-select with whatever my focus is on my ad platforms, like the LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook. Okay, so I might think a little bit further because all the landscapers I know, I grew up in the Southwest U.S. All landscapers I know listen to either 80s rock or country music. Okay, so maybe I put down Motley Crue, right? I think the Motley Crue. But the question is this is all still a guess. then I'm gonna, maybe if I found it was 80s rock, then I'm gonna have to go back and forth between the Scorpions and Motley Crue or what. So those are all tests I could do, but that's an expert. The idea is can we come up with a system whereby something does it for you and using public data and does it quick? Not necessarily instantaneous. It might take some time to process, but how would we do that? So the question is, how would we do that? What is your thought? So we have the, actually, I have some questions here. So these are the questions we have to walk through. So this is kind of the roadmap when you think about it. You have to answer these questions. And I've been in business for 20 plus years. And so this is really some of the things we think about when we use analytics. Sorry, you can tell I'm just a great purveyor of using great backgrounds here from a marketing standpoint. But everybody understands the problem, correct? I want to do a better job of selecting and targeting because it's going to cause my costs to go down. And, maybe the consumer is better or worse at that. And certainly the Facebook and the social media network holders are going to be happy for this. So how can we use AI to do this? I want to see some hands. Come on now. This is interactive. Yes.
You can have you can do a lot of gather a lot of data, label those data, do some sort of build some training model.
Okay.
Run that training model and see how well it does, and then apply it to maybe use some neural deep learning.
Okay, great. That's some great steps right there. These are some of the things we thought through. Anybody have anything else to add? Now, if I was going to actually, dig deeper here, which, we could, but we're not developing this from scratch. We already have developed it. I would sit and I would go, okay, so what data sources are you going to use? And how are you going to test it? Is it going to be a standard A/B test? So I'm going to start asking those things. And then I'm going to say, how do you know whether or not neural network's better than something else, decision tree right? So those are all questions that follow up. So the big one, though, is what will be our sources of data? To me, that's a big one. In this case, I have this problem. I want to use AI. I want to use some sort of data for making sure I choose the right thing. So what do I want to do? I want to come up with some sort of either likes or we call them business interests, et cetera, those things into Facebook, in this case, that I can select, right? So when you select, like I selected, I like the Gilligan's Island show, okay? Sorry, that's how old I am. But, Gilligan's Island, Hogan's Heroes, those are in chess, those are the things that are on my, so if somebody sees, well, chess, if they were going to landscapers, well, the person that plays chess is the person that does this. But so how are you actually going to, find all these things out? I know then eventually that it is chess that I'm going to advertise for whatever this product is. You need some source of data to begin with, that that landscapers or whatever it is that you're trying to reach play chess, more so. So any thoughts on where our source of data is going to be? What are some thoughts? Yeah.
Social media is the obvious.
Okay.
Obvious answer.
Social media is the obvious. Okay, so I'm going to grab some social media data. All right, and that's certainly one of the things. One issue I might have, certainly I have to match with the social media groups in the long run. One problem may be if I'm going to be doing this and I'm going to be using artificial intelligence, I need large sources of data, and social media is going to charge me for a lot of that, right? Because, we're talking large sources of data that I'm going to be inputting. So, social media, certainly at the end we have to map it, and you'll see on a diagram here in a minute, or a few minutes. What else?
How about something like, where are cities or neighborhoods where, more rich people live, with big properties, and so they need landscaping done more often or something?
Yeah, that's true. Geographic bounds can work to an extent. Sometimes you're constrained. So I actually had somebody say to me, Drew, I want you to go down, see what you can drill down to, and guess what? It's Buffalo as a whole. And I think they're doing that on purpose. But the other thing with geographic, which may or may not be a factor, is how many of you live in a different, you kind of all are from here, so you kind of know the neighborhood around here. You might live in a different kind of a neighborhood, but you bring your device with you. And where are you using your device? Geographic is definitely one area of that. So but what other things might I get? Yeah.
I wonder, this would give you a less volume of data, but if you actually reach out and conduct a survey or a sample,
Yes.
and they're,
Good.
yeah.
And there's actually ways to do this quickly. It's already been done. Anybody heard of Quora? Ooh, Quora is it Quora.com, right? I don't.
Yeah, Quora.com.
Quora just answers questions, and they have all these experts that answer questions. And so that's actually a great source. You know what we use Quora for sometimes is the experts put down their own likes and dislikes and things like that. They describe about themselves. So if I go to Quora and I find 3 experts that answer 70% of all landscaping questions in an area, I could probably say those 3 are people I should pay attention to. So maybe I can do some sort of, use their data that's out on Quora and or their likes and dislikes, right? Because maybe if they're experts, maybe all landscapers, I don't know, go to, back raves or something like that. Yeah.
When you say data on Quora, are you referring to like actual data sets or studies, or are you referring more so to just their like general answers about how to do things and what they have found success with?
All of the above, I guess. I mean, I could scrape it, right? We can build a program and scrape it. We're not going to build a program and scrape stuff tonight. Well, I've already had a program that can do some of this, but I mean, right? So it can be that. We've actually built a program that can go and do that. YouTube has comments. So what are all the comments? You know, there's YouTube scraper already built in. I mean, there's people that have already built this. All you have to do is like kind of commoditize it a little bit, change it to your thing. So I could build a thing that I could look for any video on landscaping that has, say, over 1 million views, and then scrape the comments, and then see what the comments say. Right? Possibly. So you're right. I mean, this is all good stuff. It's kind of like what not to look at. But this is the question that you guys are going to have to face. Some of you are saying, well, that's not a question I'm going to face. Well, sure it is. Who wants to be in a startup? Anyone? There's one. That's it? 2, 3? All right. So it's just taking control of your own kind of destiny would be something like that. So that's one way. But even if you work for the man, right? I've worked for the big companies. I worked for American Express for almost 10 years. That's a pretty big company. Innovation and thinking outside the box is really what you're trying to do. How do you measure success? I kind of gave you a hint on the prior slide, but the slide's not up there now, so you can't tell.
Click-through.
Pardon?
Click-through.
Click-through? That's one, yeah. You know social media, right? You said you like. So what? How do you measure social success? You probably know more about social media than me. No? Okay.
But, reach and.
Reach, yeah.
Engagements.
Engagements, okay, yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's not always about the actual click-through rate, because you can get a great ad, maybe the visual is good, people are going to click it, but in the long run, is the customer doing what you want them to do? So are they purchasing the insurance policy? Are they first off, they have to fill out the app. Click the ad, then they see it, and then they go, oh, I want that. Then they click another thing, and then they fill out the app. And then they have to actually be underwritten. Maybe they're too risky and they don't want to underwrite them, right? So there's all these filter downs, which makes that customer to acquire could be $300, $400, $500.
Call those conversion rates.
Conversion rates are along the way, exactly, yeah. So we looked at, in honesty, we chose click-through rates and cost per click. Because every person that we tried this on had a different definition. So we just stuck with that. Those two, they certainly went with, but we kind of chose that. What might the design flow chart look like if I were going to plan this? And why does that matter that I have to design this in the first place? I'm going to get to the moon. Here's the Earth, here's the moon, here's a few screwdrivers, here's rocket fuel, go. So what might this design flow chart look like? Anybody have any ideas? If I were going to draw on the board, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Like a data model?
A data model of some sort, okay. So I have an input of data, is what you're saying?
Like how all your different sources would link together.
Yeah, okay, so I have different ones. So maybe one's Quora, one's YouTube, whatever. I mean, certainly those could be the things that come in. So now I have an input of the data, all right? Now, what else do I have to go with this now? So let's think about, the end result is what? I'm going to call them, specifically in this case, the one that we're going to look at tonight is Facebook has their terms, in essence. And there's a number, there's tens of thousands of them on Facebook, just so you know. You can't just like say, oh, this one matches the best one. So I'm going to call this a Facebook term. We can call it whatever we want, but so somehow I have to get there. So I've got the data, now what? I want to build some sort of model that gets me there.
Then you have to analyze it first.
Okay, so I've got the data and I'm going to analyze, all right? Now, analyze, sorry, I got the ZY in there. But how am I analyzing the data? What kind of technique? Is this an analyzation? Is this the model build, or?
Well, I mean, first you model the data, and then when it's modeled, you can run it through probably some sort of regression analysis.
Okay.
Relations.
Okay, so yeah, so ranks and plots and some of the other stuff that we have to do, and then so a little bit of that's probably the analyze, and then we have some sort of a model. Great. So the model's gonna then maybe just spit out Facebook term.
Well, that would be used to go into your AI or into your machine learning, so it could
Okay.
continuously adapt and find the right.
Continuously adapt. I like that. So the only way we're going to do that is at some point we're going to have some test, and we need a feedback loop somewhere somehow, right?
Mhm.
So this is a very rudimentary model. We're going to talk about. Don't draw this. I'll have more on the board. That's probably better if you want to. But anyway, so because my handwriting's horrible too. But anybody have anything else to add about how you might actually design a flowchart? Nice.
I think that's Morse code.
There you go, Morse code. And yeah, will there be interactive loop? You already said there would be. I think that's smart. What do you think? Do you think we're going to get a lot better when we have, so if I throw out a test and I get, and we've already said we're going to measure with cost per click and CTR, so lower cost per click, higher CTR, I am going to get better with each iteration, I would hope, correct? That would be the theory. I mean, if you're going to run a statistical test, right, what's your null hypothesis and all that wonderful stuff from your undergrad. By the way, the what we found is our interactive loop did give us some gain, but not as much as we would have thought it would. What are the considerations needed in testing? Okay, I'm going to test it. How am I going to test it? Yeah?
How close you got to whatever your definition of success is.
Okay, but that's true. That's kind of the outcome. I guess the question, so when I compare, I want to have a lower one. So in order to compare, I have to have like an A/B testing, right? So these are things you kind of have to set up ahead of time. So if you're actually setting up a roadmap for a product like this, you're going to think about these things and kind of map this through. And of course, we had a year to do this over, so I don't expect it to all hit at this point. Questions like, what will the technology stack look like, and does it matter? And the answer is, well, it depends. I mean, you gotta have something that's more computing power. Fortunately, you youngins don't realize that even just a short 10 years ago, or 8, 9, 10 years ago, whatever, the computing power was not as strong. I was at Visa with, I was consulting with Visa, 3 billion transactions a month. Okay, and I was building a model. 12, 18 months, whatever. I mean, can you believe how, I mean, that's huge, right? You go out and you pull all these, that's big data. This is pre all this other stuff now. We've come a long way in speed. But you certainly have to consider what that technology stack looks like. I mean, we were looking at, let's run it through some sort of actual processor. We were trying to do rapid miner. Do we put this on a laptop? Do we put this on a server? What are the other aspects that we run through? In honesty, we ended up just writing some Python code, and it does work much faster, quicker on a server, but it actually runs on my laptop here, which is, it just runs slower. Okay. What other questions? Anybody think of, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to go back. I can't think of what it's called. I'm trying to look it up, but I know Google had some analytics tool.
Yep.
And it gives you the ability to use, Google's like supercomputers
Yes.
to run reports and things.
Yep.
And it's like free if you are under like a terabyte of data.
Yes, there's actually right now is a great time if you're a startup and you want computing speed and space, because Amazon and Google and Microsoft and they're all going at each other for this cloud space in computation and other, yeah, definitely. So, I'll let you talk to your local CTO, Chief Technology Officer, about that. No, honestly, talk with the guy that's running a startup, the tech side, and they'll be happy to discuss those things. But you're correct. It's a lot of times it's free. It can be, IBM even does stuff, I think, free for up to 3 years on things. That's outrageous. Why? Because they want you to build your whole system and process around them. Then by the time you get to 3 years, you're usually pretty successful, and then they make you pay, and it's going to be a lot to shift off of their system. It's okay. You're making money by that. So this is, one way to kind of look at it. You guys, this is really what we're talking about. Now you're saying, Drew, I'm in AI, I'm trying to figure out how to code, whatever. We're going to get to that part. Just bear with me a little bit. But this is all the stuff that you have to think in the background on the business side. Now, what might this look like? Okay, so let's actually look at the old method. The old method is, in this case, the human Val, right? We already talked about Val coming up with industry keywords, and then they, throw it out, somehow map it up against Facebook, and hopefully it sticks, and we go. The new way is, let's actually look at that industry possibly, and look at blogs, look at articles, look at discussion forums, look at internet articles in general about topics, and then use some sort of artificial intelligence, the Valbot, and then, come up with the industry keywords, and then do the Facebook. So, I'm not going to read the slide, but you can obviously see what's going on there. So we can then test it with a split. Another testing specification I forgot to say is you can't test a campaign with the human on the weekend with the Valbot on the weekdays, right? You got to test them side by side, and you have to have the same, I call it creative. This is not about the creative. So you know what I mean by the creative? It's the nice little picture ad. It's the little Val with the eye patch over the robot, right? So that's the creative aspect, because your actual creative could be drawing in more people as well. So that's a different kind of testing. So this is my diagram that I drew way back when. I think these guys put it together for me. But so you kind of start at the bottom, and people say you shouldn't start at the bottom, Drew. But anyways, it's you have data collection. You then gather a data corpus. You then do the model. So this is very similar to what we kind of drew on the board here. We then have to somehow launch it into Facebook. So Python ad launcher. Then it goes physically into Facebook. Then it comes out. Right, so take it out of Facebook, Python, and then you put in the past results and send it through the loop and see if you can get better or tighter, right? That's true machine learning, okay? And it becomes AI depending on the method you use. And so neural networks was one of the methods that we were looking at. We ended up actually using decision tree for various reasons. But this is a very rudimentary, this is what I drew on the board when I was trying to recruit my students to come in and do this. This is more the bigger portion, right? This is actually what we built. We have keywords, we have articles, we have websites, we have blogs. We're going to input the data into our system, which I'm going to show you in a minute. It's then going to go and do an internet corpus search, okay? It's then going to do some text mining. It's then going to come out with some Facebook terms extraction. Then now we go back, we actually do the auto ad posting, and we do the loop here. How did it perform and so forth, and it's going to loop through. So that's very similar to what I just showed you. This is more modern. I'm not going to bore you with this one, but you can see, hey, this is a lot more detail. How are we doing this? Neo is our database. It's a graph database that is the foundation for this. That kind of stores all the connections. But anyway, so those of you that are more interested, so you start and you delve more and more and more into how you're actually going to be doing it. Now, what are some of the things that we thought about? Again, what are we going to be using for our corpus, our data corpus? So you start thinking about what are those things. We could use Twitter, we could use forum, we could use all these various things. How are we going to actually then process or pre-process the data, right? So are you guys into some of these things now, like processing or pre-processing data in your classes? Those that are taking classes? Yes, some of you, yes. Okay, so this looks familiar to you. When I talk about, oh, we can clean, we can stem, so some of these things hopefully aren't, out there new to you. And then, so from there, then we have to figure out what are we going to look at from it, some sort of algorithm selection. So we actually use a few. We talked about algorithms for your what's fair game for tonight, which is not on here. But, what methods are we going to use to kind of go through this? And then we want to actually validate this all against Facebook to make sure it actually is a Facebook term so that we can actually, advertise for that. Make sense? So that is an aspect of the actual thing. Now, this is what the original one looked like. So this is our focus on the ValBot. So the original was, you see the click-through rate. In round one, you see the human and you see the machine, all right? So the machine is ValBot, the human is the expert. So lo and behold, we have, worse click-through rates, worst cost per click. So why is that? So we have, in other words, we have lower click-through rates and we have higher cost per click. Well, why is that? That's the first run through. Anytime you actually do something, so this is our rudimentary model. This was right at the very beginning. It wasn't through the full structure that I just showed you. All right, great. So, we're worse off. Now let's actually tune this for gender, okay? So now we start actually gaining a little bit of knowledge and we start being, okay, so we're okay on our click-through rate, our CPC, we're not. Now let's actually focus this on 10 aerospace states, because remember I said this is about aerospace suppliers, rivets, screws, sheet metal. We're trying to attract a major, actually this is very specifically a major airline or aeronautics manufacturer to a specific area in Kentucky that they already knew had this area, actually the tri-state area near Kentucky. So what do they find? They still weren't quite the same. So now they actually tuned it by age, and lo and behold, we now have a better audience. So that's really what we're hoping for. So this is the quasi-brain. It was kind of human-guided a little bit in here, but this was our round one of what we did. All right. Now, the demo. I'm going to just quickly show you. The demo is literally this. It's a box. This is how we do things. It's a box. You would literally enter phrases in the box. You're then going to get a screen that gives you, goes against the internet, goes against the articles and so forth, where we gather the corpus from, and comes up with some various different aspects, articles from that. So Miner, in this case it was Miner was the thing that was entered in, and you can see Jack Miner came up, Steve Miner, and I was, meaning Miner. The problem is using one word Miner could be problematic because it's not descriptive enough. It should have been gold miner or something like that, right? So we'll go to that in a second. But you can see, how many word counts are going up against that. So there's some background. Then we actually have a graphic mapping of kind of where do these phrases come together. And then we actually go and we can see, okay, so the from word, and we're going to blow this up on an actual example. The from word here is miner. It brings to the from term, which now matches to the Facebook name. And there's a Facebook ID out of those tens of thousands, and I think there's actually over 100,000 now Facebook selection terms that you can do. So then I could say, my audience size is, okay, there's only 27,000 in the coal miner's daughter, but there's family and relationships, 1, 2, 9, there's a lot. But the question is, minor? How did they go from minor to family and relationships? Could be some issues if I'm just using one word in this, right? So this was my example of one word. Now, I'm going to, and then the output would then, we could create an ad campaign which would look like that. But, so, I'm going to use what's called a fintech firm in Canada that we actually did this for. This fintech firm had they offer loans to businesses, okay? So, and it's prime and near prime. They don't do subprime loans. They've got money, they don't have enough customers coming to them because a lot of small businesses tend to be small, subprime because of whatever reason, right? So they're trying to offer decent things. So their idea was, how can we actually figure this out? So they gave us 4 words that they used 4 terms on Facebook that they used, and their average cost per click was $4 to $6. Okay. We took those 4 terms, put them into our bot, came out with 20 different terms, Facebook terms, mapped it, threw it out there, and we got, I think, $2 and something. We're going to show that in a few minutes, but $2.50 cost per click, much lower. That's not good enough for me, right? I still need a little bit. That's the only corpus I use was their 4 terms that they've already used, and I still beat them. What if I could add to that? How could I add to that? So I literally went out to the web, and I gathered 8 articles on small business lending on one website. Took them, pasted them into a text document, okay? And then I ran a simple query. Sorry, I thought it was open. I ran a simple query of, I want to pull from these 8 or 10 articles, I want to pull anytime you see 2 words together. And then I want you to rank order it. And I could do 3 words, I did 3 words, I did, I could do any of those, but I chose that. So here's the test. So NLTK, so we're pulling from natural language processing, so that's that kind of library, pulling these from. And here is, my stuff. I'm not going to go into detail on this, but you guys are, this is actually looking like coding for those of you that are, now you're excited, those of you that aren't coding. Yeah, okay. Anyone into coding? Like, they love doing this? Yeah, you love doing it? A couple that love doing it. All right. Coding can be, it has to be done at some point. So I'm going to physically run this file, and I'm going to come out with, lo and behold, I have all of these terms from this file, set from these. Okay, great. So now what do? Is I want to open this up into a, I want to literally open this up and punch in these words. Right now, what are those words? So small business, business loan and business loans, that's the same. I'm going to get rid of that, right? It doesn't make any sense because it might actually cause me a problem. Small business loans is different than business loan, but loan, plural, so forth. So I'm going to take these, and I'm going to say, I'm going to take any with 10 and above, and I'm going to literally copy these over and plug them into the engine. Now the engine's going to run super quick because it's in a database, and I've already put these words into the database. But if you notice those words that are there, what's happening in the background? You'll see it says, oh, these are already in the database. We're going to enter a few sets of words not in the database, and then we'll run it, and then we'll go back and finish the conversation because it'll take some time to run. So what do I see? Oh, the business credit keyword actually came out in, into credit control. Okay, and some page ID, you don't have to worry about that. How this came out and the word counts and all these things. Oh, there's some interesting things that popped up. Credit bureaus in the Philippines. That's weird, but it did. Okay, so we'll see, does this actually play through? Loan shark. Right, so you can see on the left kind of where we started, and then this is the intermediate word that's kind of out of there, and then this is, from that process. And I have 5 pages. I have 240 entries like this. Right? Golub Capital, lending tree. All right, so now I want to actually take this, do some more text analysis on it, and do this is where our algorithm, which is our black box, kind of comes in, and will pop out and then map to Facebook. Okay, so what do I get? I get that screen we talked about. Now this is using, are anybody familiar with the TSNE plot? Okay, it's just an algorithm. Okay, good, we got one in the back. Look, I took stochastic methods a long time ago, but in essence, it is a way of actually looking for measuring distances. So just had that up for fun. So I'm looking here and I'm saying, okay, so loan society is near loan rate, which is near bank organization registration, which is near range project, which is near bank year. And you guys are going, this is crazy, Drew. How in the world is this going to help you? Trust me, it did. So just bear with me. I moved the whole scheme. Stop moving. Okay. So over here, I've got credit unions in the middle. I've got decision credit here. I've got some other terms. It might make sense that these are all together. Entitlement loan. Down here, I've got FICO consumer with bureau score, FICO bureau score with FICO score, with file account. So these are all kind of gathered together. Yeah?
What's the actual values of the X and Y axis?
So that's where you, that's where you have to understand this stochastic
Oh,
process
okay,
on the,
specific,
yeah,
okay.
yes, exactly, it's great. But it's kind of measuring the groups of where they all fall together. But what we're doing is we're using this kind of a algorithm to then tie in to the next screen, which is where the quote-unquote answer all lies, right? So, on the next screen, did I click it? There we go. Now, this is the final, all right? So I started with, credit score was one of the words, so was small business loan, okay? Lo and behold, they gave me all of these things here. Lo and behold, it outputs credit rating agency. And again, I'm doing small business loans. I'm trying to reach that audience on Facebook. Number one question, why isn't AI everywhere, besides processing power and everything else? AI has been around for years. You have to explain to regulators what you're doing, right, a lot of times? You have to explain to business owners what you're doing. Some of the stuff doesn't make sense. The AI, neural networks come up with some answers. Have you guys done neural networks yet in your classes? A little? They come up with some things you don't even know why they came up with that, right? It just happens. It's easier for me to explain a logistic regression. I can draw, a bandwidth of what's happening with a logistic regression, right? A logistic regression is basically bounding between 0 and 1, and I'm using some form that goes like this, whether I'm using probit or logit. So it's bound by 0 and 1. Or if it's a regular straight linear regression, I can explain that by the dots around it, right? It's not hard for me to explain. It is sometimes hard for me to explain how these things go through, but in essence, that's really what we're using. By that TSNE. So I have these things over here, and they seem to actually make fun, interesting things. Small Business Saturday. Why would that come through? I don't know. Audience size 144,000. I could actually go down here and choose these, and what we did is we chose the top. There's a score in here that we kind of used. In this case, the distance is 0. The distance gets greater than 0 down here. But we chose 25 of these, threw them in the campaign, and our $2.50 cost per click went down to lower than $2. I grabbed 8 or 9 articles from the internet, just on small business lending, threw them through a basic text processing, said, give me 2 terms together. Then we used then we used this technique to then go out and gather these words that then, so the from words then matched the from term, which then gave us the Facebook name. All this was programmed out, and you'll see the results in a minute. But it's kind of cool, right? How did that work? All right, so that being the case, let's actually go one step further. I can choose small business, software, and credit agency, and business owner, and I can now, oops, I don't want to press next. I can now use my own selection. I can run this ad for 5 days. I can say buff state test. I can put in a website, right? Which it'll go to. In other words, when they click it, I can measure my dollars, and I can then go choose the file that I choose, which is going to be in the pictures here. So I'm going to just choose my big abacus or something like that. I'm going to create the ad, and lo and behold, I will get an ad output out of this in just a minute. So we'll go check on that in a second. All right. Now, what I want to do when this comes up, still up there? Okay. I want to actually come up with a couple words. We're going to throw some of your words in, and it's going to take a little bit of time to process, but I want you guys to think about what would you put together in a test. You want to advertise to a group. Somebody come up with a group you think you can come up with some words for.
Students.
Students, okay. Students, great. So now when we come up with students, remember, I don't want singular words when I'm going to type this into our thing. I want multiple words, because singular words are going to be problematic for me. I'm going to get minor, right? I'm going to get all the people with last name minor or something like that. All right, so it's finished. Great, that's done. So we'll go check that in a minute, but I want to enter the process. So when you think of students, what do you think of? So I want to market to students. Yes, what
Test scores.
Test scores. All right, this is going to be interesting.
Dorm room.
Pardon?
Dorm room.
Dorm room. Okay, let's go one more. I don't want to go too overload the system.
Maybe the names of schools?
Pardon?
Maybe the names of schools?
Well, the names of schools maybe, but then that might skew it somewhat, but that's definitely true.
Moving in day.
Moving in day. Oh my goodness. I hope this works. And I'm going to press go and we're going to go off. So what I want to do now, so it's going to process in the background here. So instead of it being really quick like it was before, saying, hey, it's in the database, because I actually have a database open, you just don't see it. Created a database, and every time, now I will never have to ask for that again, because those words will be in my database. But let's just go off to another world, and we'll come back to this in a minute. So I should have done this before. And it's the wrong one. All right. Don't you hate that? All right. Oh, there's my wife and me. I have to go to the right Facebook, right? To be logged in, and then I'll do Ads Manager on Facebook. And we created an ad, right? Remember that ad? And it had the A name right here, right? And you remember I chose 3 different selections. So if I go in here, they just changed everything I discovered. So I want to make sure I can actually, now, shoot, it does that. Okay, edit the ad. All right, here we go. So I haven't pressed go, so don't worry. I'm not spending $5. This is going to my boss. It's going to Bob's Facebook account anyways. Right, so here's my image. I can actually, do something. It kind of tells me some of these other things on here. I can now select some other aspects of it. Anybody actually done Facebook advertising before? Yeah? Okay, oh, a couple people. All right, so now I'm still looking for my selection because I want to show you the selection, and for some reason it didn't. They just changed everything in the last little bit. Well, you can choose WhatsApp, Messenger, etc. Here's my lifetime budget, since it was, did I type in more than $5? Oh, no, $5, okay. And here we go, the audience. Now, I did not check or change the audience, right? I didn't have that. We could build that in, but United States, Canada, and you can drill down, those of you who want to know, you can work on age, you can work on men, women, enter languages. Now, do you remember the 3 I pressed? They were business owner, credit rating, and small business software, already done for you. So what we've created is kind of a process to quickly come up with those things that will then drive advertising campaigns, right? So I don't have to re-enter those. And I know what they are because of what I went through, but does that all make sense on the Facebook side? Okay, so it's kind of cool. Guess what? There's a ton of companies now that do this. So we don't focus as much on the placing ads into Facebook as much as in coming up with what we should be telling Facebook, selecting. A lot of companies that do a lot of Facebook advertising, they do it all internal anyways. They don't want to mess around with their ads. They want you to just give them the audience to then select and work with. So just for fun, we're going to look and we're going to see it's still going. Now let's actually see. This is the fun part. I love this. Did you see Hillary Clinton's in here, right? I mean, I see Reader's Digest. What word are we looking for? I'm going to go up to the top. Oh, shoot, it was just there. It's a moving thing, right? No, it keeps on going down. It keeps on coming up with one. But it's funny. You're going to go, where in the world is this coming up? We're matching this against certain sites on the web for articles. And then we're going in and we're doing a lot of textual analysis. And like I said, I'm using the algorithms from that and then coming up with the mapping then against the Facebook term. So let's let this continue to run and let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so the class submission, that's what we did. Let's look at the results. This is the fintech firm. Right. Test number 1. So you see human, you see machine, and you see Mac human. We also had a theory that if we had some weird words, maybe the human should go down and pull them out, right? Because we had some weird things. And so they didn't want to advertise, so our tester didn't want to advertise. There's not a lot of money going out here until the very bottom, and we'll get to that. But they didn't want to advertise and have these weird words. So that was called the Mac hum. So the human got to choose, they had to choose at least 50% of the words that the machine came up with. And they could also reduce their words down. So 4 terms searched, 23 terms on the machine, 6 terms on the Mac human for the first round, and there you have it. 420. Actually, it wasn't even in the 2s. It was in the $3 for the machine. $1.30 for the Mac human. That's interesting. Wow, that's really low. So that gives us hope. But like I said, I was not happy with the machine at $3, so I went out, got those 9 web pages, copied them into a text file, You saw how short that Python script was, very simple. Just give me 2 words together and rank order them, sort them. And so I took the ones that had at least 10 listed, threw them into our machine, and that's round 2. And look, lo and behold, the machine and the Mac Human both are $1.88. What also is happening is this feedback loop. So we took the 23 words for the machine in the first part, we've narrowed it down to like 7 or 10, I think 10. We then added 25 words from the new list that I had, and then we went from there, so that came better. And the same thing down here is now test 3. It's an iteration back. We saw the results, and we're using some basic decision tree theory with doing this. And the reason we didn't use neural networks is because with neural networks you need a lot more data points, and each campaign would be a data point. And we didn't have even over 100 campaigns when we were doing all this through the system. So lo and behold, the human, again, is, by the way, the human, there was some funky stuff in there, so we just asterished it out. The human is at $6. Like I said, it was between $4 and $6 for these same terms. And we then got the machine and the machine prime. Machine prime is just, we took the top of this, we took the top half that reached the most audience, but we got rid of the bottom half of the words. No big deal. So it's a very simple rule, algorithm we came up with. Really not a lot of difference, but they like these 2 middle ones. We're not spending a lot of money, and we ran it for a lot of money now. $1,200. For them, this is a lot of money. It's a small firm. It's a fintech firm. This is $4,000 or something. Oh, not quite $4,000 they're spending in a month on doing this. Now, we got worse cost per click, but we still okay. Our CTRs are okay. They're certainly better than the 21 of the human at the top. They're a little lower than the human 26 down in the test 3. Why did I get worse in round 3 full versus round 3? Anybody have an idea?
The volume.
Volume, exactly, and it's highlighted there. So the frequency viewed, we talked about impressions and we talked about reach. Impressions means I could see the ad twice, so therefore it's 2 to me versus somebody else. So on average, before it was like in the 1.2, the 1.3, because these were shorter tests. When you leave the same words out there for a month, you're going to get a much higher, so your impressions per user are going to go higher, which is going to, you're either going to want the loan or you're not going to want the loan and click through, right? This either pertains to me or it doesn't pertain to me. Showing me more things about a business loan when I don't own a business is not helping you any. So what that tells me is they should have changed the words after a week and then maybe gone back to the same words a week later, right? So swapping it. And those were some of the suggestions that we worked with. But does everybody kind of see how this actually works? So we have lower cost per click in essence, and we have higher click-through rate. Kind of cool. Business application. All right. Quickly, I'll go on to a couple others. We did a healthcare software startup. They are wanting to reach medical administrators in the Southwest U.S. It's a startup that I'm advising. So that was the other, remember it said 2 + 2, I was involved in 2 and I'm advising 2. That was one of the ones I'm advising. And so they kind of tried the same thing. The hybrid is the machine-human. Lo and behold, we came up, it was slightly different test. The hybrid was not a straight test like before, but sure enough, we discovered that the click-through rate was much higher and the cost per click. Why would you measure cost per click? Because sometimes you have higher costs. Like the hybrid had more clicks, but it also had more budget, right? So that's why you have to be relative on cost per clicks, click-through rates, and those things. This isn't a social media class, so sorry if I'm boring you on that aspect, but some of you that like social media, this is all great, and you do like it. Anyway, so this was, hey, look, and there's some things at the bottom. I'm not going to, read off the things to you. Overall, we did this on several things. We did an academic. A private school up north was having a conference on continuing education for K through 12 instructors. Okay, specific topics of what it was. We discovered that, hey, we could even lower their cost per click and increase their CTR. The fintech firm is the one we talked about. There were also some insurance brokers that were wanting to find out about some aspect of, believe it or not, of wealth planners. So who personal financial representatives, planners. Guess what? On top of all that, you can save on your manpower, because no longer do you have to figure, okay, even the expert, even if you're valued the expert and you know to choose Powerade, Ford pickup trucks, Toro weed eater, and all these other things, it still takes you time to then map all these, click it all through, when you can actually process this all through very quickly on this end. All right? So there we go. Oh, this means check on class submission. So let's see where we're at. All right. Hopefully, it's done. Now, this is interesting, right? So Squarespace is a dorm room. So they do their furniture, aren't they?
They're a website.
Online website that does furniture? No, what are they?
You build your own website.
You build your own website. That's interesting. Okay, dorm room. So, but I don't know if we're going to see them in the long run, right? That's just a word title that this came up with. Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. That's interesting. The back, so we could go on here, right? And I want to quickly, jump in. Yeah, Family Moving Day. I'm going to go to page 2, and I have Moving On and some other things on here. All right. I did not plan this. As you guys know, you helped me. Now, one thing we know here is, let's just see, moving in day, it says, I don't like, moving in is not a frequent word, it's a problem, so I'm having some issues with it, but anyways. So literally, so Hillary Clinton was on this one, which was the second one chosen, which was dorm room. Now, is Hillary Clinton going to be on the final list? Let's check and see. We probably don't think so. Just because it came up on one of the articles does not mean that it's going to be tied, because remember, we're using algorithms to now tie these words to how close they are to each other, to then submit to the API of Facebook to then pull up the end Facebook term. All right? So I'm going to press next, and I'm going to see a few groups. I see Street Wall, I see Freshman Press, I see Time York. I don't even know where this came from. A dorm room diet, that's at least close. Dorm room here, reference note, and so forth. So I'm going to just continue on. This just kind of gives me an idea of where these words. Here we go. Fuller House, the TV, not Full House, of course. It's the new one for those of you that are young. You don't even know about the old one, do you? Morning, so again, Moving in Day only brought me Moving in Day, only brought me Full House, Fuller House. Okay, fine. Dorm Room, Morning America, etc. Dorm Room, Washington Post. That's interesting, Washington Post style. So why are those? I don't know. Maybe because there's a lot of talk from the Washington Post about dorms, and maybe for the Ivy Leagues have some sort of weighting influence on that and how that would go forward. But these are the actual, this column here is the actual Facebook name or that term that you would go to, and this is the actual ID. And you can see the audience size as well. How Occupy Wall Street was in there. How would I choose these? Well, you can do it. You can see here the scores are higher, like this bottom one. Dorm room somehow came up with Wall Street Journal. But the score is 5. So further, it means it's further away from our target, right? So all of these have a distance of 1. With only using 3 terms and generic terms like that, maybe it wasn't quite as good. And that was my thought process. If you remember when I was talking about the fintech, we started with 4 terms. And we got down to, we got a savings. We got down to $3 cost per click instead of the $4 to $6 range. But I was hoping for more, and so that I had to add more input. I had to add more corpus. The problem is Facebook doesn't like you shoving things through fast, and so they slow you down. Or if you don't slow down, they kind of cut you off. So there's various things of maintaining this system. So I could, again, I'm not going to show you because we're almost up on time here. But I could choose all of these if I wanted, or I could just use my selection and choose some of these and put them in. I mean, why is The Wolf of Wall Street, the 2013 film? You might say that has absolutely nothing to do. So that's why we thought the Mac human made sense, because there's got to be a little bit of guidance. But the Mac human doesn't mean the human is doing all the work. The human at the end is doing the work, saying, no. Boiler Room film is not the right one to go for. Right? That's what they're saying.
Can I ask
Yeah.
So what is that second column from the right, the from?
Yeah. So what happens is we started with these words, the from words. We went to the internet and we pulled access from, this is where the secret sauce is, pulled access from various articles and so forth. And we used text mining and to do it. And we got some of these words that then popped up a lot with dorm room.
Okay, so they
Yeah, and that's, yeah, I don't know if we use covariant, we use, other algorithms. I think one of the big algorithms we used was the TSNE plot. So, but yeah. Yeah,
The distance, is that straight from the TSNE stochastic diagram? And that maps to it?
I don't know. I
Okay.
think it is, but I'm not sure. Sorry, I didn't actually build the distance measure. I just said I want some sort of a measure for seeing how close, for ranking, right?
Yeah.
So I might just take the top 10. In this case, all the distances are, a little bit large or something. But, I have this Princeton University band, there's only 880 people. So even if I wanted to do it, is it really going to be helping me by focusing on them or not? I don't know. Maybe. But it's only 880 people. And by the way, these audience sizes are known to vastly overstate typically, especially these large ones. If anybody is familiar with Facebook, they do that. Yeah.
Actually, I have a question. What if you target a geographical area of 10 miles around Buffalo and then try and do these words?
That would be a great thing to do as well. It would give you an estimate, right? If you did this on your Facebook campaign, right, it will give you an estimate of audience size, right?
Yeah.
So the potential reach here for this original one was 7 million people without geographic boundaries. It's Canada and the US. So you can actually do that, limit it, and then it will actually change your reach.
Right. And Facebook sometimes will give you a warning saying this is too small, don't bother.
Right, exactly. So I think, like you said, Buffalo is Buffalo. It's not going to let you go to South Buffalo or North Buffalo or whatever. I'm not from Buffalo, so forgive me if you guys are east, west, south, north, whatever. But anyway, so yeah, this is where some of the fine tuning comes in. So we could have put, but we stopped developing our Facebook ad application. But we could have put in, the age and the gender and the income estimates and so forth. On here, but you're very right. What we're doing, our goal here was to take an approach, a technical approach, and apply it, and then come out with people that do know what they're doing on the Facebook. Maybe they don't know why they're doing it, but they do know, how to enter the ads and follow that and so forth. And so that was in essence what we were trying to do. All right. So we've had a few questions. It is rather weird, I get it, and you're going to get some weird results like this when you have not as many words. So I like throwing in bunches of words, and that's really why, what helps me. So again, I'm going to throw in these same words, and it's going to run super fast because it's already in the database, right? And we're going to look, and most of these will make sense to you a little bit more. Like this is all the words, the nearest words. And now we're coming in and going, okay, so small business, I want to advertise to people that work in small businesses that might want loans. Okay, small business and business lending. Well, duh. Those are the words that you would think of. They go to small business software. That's not so unique. I don't know if I would have thought of small business software. Val would not think of that, but ValBot will. And we did enter these in, right? And found the actual thing. Of those. Business credit score, real-time data, that is not something, I can't make that connection, but you can kind of potentially see, okay, business credit and credit score, a lot of times people want that quickly and it has to do with information credit, so real-time data is actually used. I worked at the credit bureau up in Canada, TransUnion. So you have two kinds of credit scores, right? You have credit score delivery when they send it overnight, but when you're applying for a credit card or a car, you want the answer now. And so that's called live. And so the actual cost of that credit score overnight, it's cheap. Right now, it can be not super expensive, but it can be, a quarter, $1 or $2 or whatever, right? That's how much they're going to charge for right now, but it can be like a fraction of a penny if you're willing to wait overnight. So that's how this real-time data somehow came in. Does it make sense to me? It does to me because I know the credit bureau business, right? But would most people think about this? Probably not. And would they even know to map this to that Facebook group name unless you knew all 90,000? Well, there were 80 or 90,000 I think when we started, but now I think there's over 6 figures of Facebook groups, Facebook terms. So, and again, it comes up in here. On additional interest, business owner, additional interest. Oh, these are all additional interests. But sometimes it's, group or likes or things like that it measures you. So, yes?
Is it the same kind of approach for different social media platforms, or are there different strategies that?
So that's a great question. It's the same approach. Really what you're doing is at the very end, so you have your corpus, then you're mapping it to our secret sauce, and then the very last thing, and then there's some analyzation that goes in there, and then the very last thing is mapping it to Facebook terms. LinkedIn has terms. Fortunately or unfortunately, Facebook has multiple advertising platforms, behind Facebook, and they use the same groups. But yeah, Twitter, same concept. We have estimated, we haven't built it, but we estimated LinkedIn would probably cost us an extra, I'm trying to think, I think it was going to be some small amount, 80 hours of programming, coding, just to map it. So yeah, I mean, it's this very small investment if you think about it, to go ahead and do a whole nother platform. So if anybody's here in charge of a grant and you want to extend something, I'd be happy to apply this to. All right, so hopefully some of you are going, this isn't really what I thought about it was going to be about, is it, right? Some of you are going, oh, he's going to get into some deep AI concept. No, hopefully you didn't. Hopefully you came in and thought, how can I actually apply AI and analytics